Hello, everybody. Welcome to your next episode of the Big Home Ed Conversations. So you are here with myself, Kelly Rigg. I'm a home ed mum of two, founder of Off-Roading Motherhood. I'm a qualified mindset coach, and I have a real passion for working with home ed, but also neurodivergent families and schooly families as they're kind of transitioning into the kind of home ed lifestyle, which can be an absolute minefield of mindset shifting, which can be really, really stressful. I really enjoy it. My beautiful co-host is Ashley Vanerio. So she is also a fellow home ed mum of three and an ex-primary teacher. So we are good friends and have been now for a few years. I must figure out how long it's been, actually. It's probably been ages. Been doing this podcast for ages. So, I mean, like, who knows? But essentially, we used to sit around the table, drinking coffee, getting seriously into various topics that we're really passionate about and kind of holding each other accountable, building each other up, shifting each other's mindsets. And we found ourselves thinking, gosh, this would make a brilliant podcast. And actually the main feedback we've had is that it really feels like you're pulling up a chair and joining us at the table. So we're really glad that you're here. Can't wait to get stuck into today's subject because it's actually quite a meaty one. And it's something which is quite an interesting one, considering we are what would kind of be referred to, I think, in the home ed community as kind of new age home educators ourselves. And I think that there's a real conversation to be had around how home education in the UK and across the world is evolving. It's gone from being quite a tight-knit, small, locally community group, like in a locality, you'd have a group of people who'd be home educating. And having spoken to some from kind of a more traditional setting, I'm talking literally 10 years ago, 5-10 years ago, they're saying that the community in the past couple of years, especially since COVID, has gone from being, say, an equivalent of 30 people to being more like 300. And so that ridiculously huge growth that they've seen has meant that there's been a massive shift in how home education is done and the way that people contribute to and benefit from the community. And this has its downsides, but it can also have some incredible upsides. And so we're going to kind of get into that today and talk about the fact that actually we don't think this is something to be too scared of. I think that there's a lot of evolving that is happening, but I think that most of us who are entering into the home ed community do care an awful lot about maintaining the good from the original concepts of home education. And that also we have to remember that whatever the concept was 10 years ago is going to be very different to how it was 30 years ago. Same, right? It's going to be always evolving. And with the age of information, we're at a real advantage as parents these days. We can actually sense what is going on in the world and what is important for us and our families. And actually it's giving people opportunities to try something different. So before we get into that, and I hope it's going to be a good one, we obviously want to do our gratitude. So we definitely need to be talking about something we're excited about this week. I know that I'm about to go on holiday. So, I mean, obviously apart from that, very excited about that. First proper holiday of the year. We did do a couple of days down camping at the beach just as a little impromptu getaway where I forgot the tent poles a couple of weeks ago. That was fun. I suppose not forgot, they just weren't in the bag. So, I mean, whose fault is that? We'll blame it on the husband because that's always easier. But I guess, so gratitude this week. Do you know what? I'm going to be grateful for how grateful my children are. I've had a couple of moments this week when I've recognised my children being so thankful and appreciative, curious, open, saying thank you at the end of a lovely day out, well trained. My son is so well trained from the rants that he has experienced from me on occasion. Usually after the gift shop, I'm just like, can we just be grateful for the lovely day out? Say thank you, mummy, this was so nice. Stop moaning about wanting to buy everything from the gift shop. But anyway, so I noticed they were really grateful after our day out that we had on Wednesday. And yesterday I brought them home some new pants and socks and some shorts for my daughter. And they were just so over the moon and thankful for the lovely things that they got from me. There was no moaning. There was no, oh, I don't like these, or, oh, can you take these back, please? Or any of that kind of stuff that you maybe would expect of children to be just like honest and brutal. Children can so often be. But I really loved how instantly just like, oh, thank you, mummy. These are really cool. I love them. Like, this is really great. And that just, it makes me realise, I guess, in those moments that I am grateful for them. And I tell them often how thankful I am for the things that they do for me. And that actually I really see that they do really appreciate the life that I give them. And I think that's something, if taking a moment to really pause and reflect and appreciate that is so important, because it helps us to shake off any of that kind of like any resentment that's sitting there irritating you, or that feeling like, oh, they just don't care, or they're not listening to me, or they're making things hard work when I'm trying to make them sit and do their maths or whatever it is, that if you could just actually notice the bits where they are actually really grateful and really take the opportunities they get by the horns as well, and they really appreciate what they get. It's just lovely, isn't it, really? So it's a nice feature of my kids, I think.
Yeah, that's always the goal, right? It's nice when you can kind of see some of that come back because it's kind of like seeds, right? Like you
Mm.
plant them, but it takes a while to see the result there.
So I swear most of the
Definitely.
things that I teach my children are a bit like asparagus. You're going to plant the seed and you're going to wait 2 solid years before you see anything
Yes,
coming up.
I know, right? I know. Yeah, I think for me, the thing that I'm definitely, appreciating right now and grateful for was just the opportunity. Last night we were able to sort of last minute do a family dinner and meaning out at a restaurant, which we don't usually ever do for many reasons. It's an expense. It's never as enjoyable as we think it will be. Someone's fighting or not wanting to sit still or doesn't like the food, or we pay for, a food that isn't eaten and all of that. So there's this restaurant near us that has this lovely outdoor area. So what's great is every time the kids get antsy, they can go run and play. So as long as you go on a nice day, meaning just not raining, they can explore outside. And now with the weather being not the weather, but the with the daylight savings, we're getting sun much later into the evening. And so I mean it's bright the whole time we're there, which is great. And I don't think we got home until 9 o'clock last night, and we were not driving in the dark. So
It's
it
so
was,
deceptive, isn't it? I
yes,
keep accidentally looking at the time where the kids be like, it's 9 o'clock. You guys need to go to bed.
yeah. How are you not in bed? Exactly. It is. It's so, so confusing. But it was just really nice. Everyone got along, and the kids even like went to the bathroom themselves, which is like a very big
Mm,
milestone in
yeah.
my book. Like I was like, okay, do you know where it is? Go. Because, when they're outside playing constantly, they constantly have to come in and wash their hands
Mm.
before we eat. And so it was either me going to the bathroom with them a million times or them managing it on their own because it was quite far from the restaurant because it was in a hotel. So they did it and that just felt really good, like a big checkbox of independence. So it was enjoyable all around.
That sounds lovely. And I think whether or not you'll thank me for this, but the story you were telling me before we got on about the accidental horrendous night's sleep people had last night after the tiramisu has really tickled me. Uh,
Yes.
I've got
Not thankful for that. I'm not thankful for the tiramisu. That was
just a
clearly
little
made with
caffeine for
shots of like I mean I don't know how much coffee they put in this, but it was definitely like Italian strong get out of bed in the morning coffee. We just all of us were so impacted. It was awful. That was not I was ready to call the waiter at 2 in the morning.
I was going to say, I think that's worth some feedback. So do me a favor. Can you make a
Yeah,
decaf version of this? Who wants to
seriously.
sleep at night?
If you're serving it for dinner, it should not be like I mean, you should eat, college students should eat it for breakfast. That's my
Yeah.
recommendation. Like there's a some gold in there for them, I'll tell you. You don't need an
Oh,
energy
funny.
drink. Just have the tiramisu from Terrazza.
Getting into our conversation today, which is one which as I say, this is a conversation which came up for me quite a while ago, actually, when we were sitting planning this series out and we find ourselves thinking about some different topics we wanted to talk about. And we really think it's important to recognize that actually so much is changing, and that can be a good thing. It can be something really exciting. But actually, we can sometimes be really fearful of change, and especially when you maybe have seen a community or a way of life, a lifestyle, I guess, that has been so beautiful for you and your family, and you have really enjoyed home education looking the way it did for you and your kids as they were growing up, and maybe you can see a new age home education coming down the line that is not the same, and that must be really hard to watch, because I think all of us, like a bit like the little old lady that sat there looking out of her window thinking once upon a time all of that was just fields and now look at it, it's just a sea of houses.
Yeah.
It can feel really scary when stuff changes. Sometimes things aren't always for the better. And I think that we can definitely agree that there's always going to be downsides to change. When a problem feels like it's being fixed, often that creates another problem. And so it's not always a smooth road. But actually, when we look at kind of what we mean by the traditional homemade community, so I think we don't know if this is going to be the case in other countries. Ultimately, we're kind of talking to the UK kind of community and how we've seen it as we've come into it and what we've kind of recognised from it. But ultimately, the gist of how this community in the UK goes is that it's actually very locally community based, obviously, because obviously the internet is only a fairly recent invention. So 20, 30 years ago, it would have been almost entirely a small group of parents who, for whatever reason, have decided to home educate, probably in a large way because of real strong beliefs about the education system, etc., and have ultimately come together to home educate as a community. And that would have meant them providing, say, kind of free groups and things for each other, resources for each other. Like, they would have planned things to all do together, trips to go out and do together. And that ultimately, the concept of making a profit from the home education community or even charging for your time was something that was considered to be quite taboo. The concept was you were supposed to just keep giving. Like, if all of you give, then you all receive. And then actually you all just kind of serve each other. But I think what's really vital to remember in remembering that actually everything still costs money. So individuals who would have been providing those things for other people would have been doing so out of pocket. They would have been sourcing things themselves and creating these opportunities for their friends and community. And ultimately, this model works beautifully when it's a small, tight-knit group of people who are all contributing, all giving, all receiving, and everyone's satisfied and happy with what they have in that. But ultimately, as it's kind of described to me, that obviously with COVID and the sudden burst of home education, it's gone from being an equivalent of, say, 30 to 300, which means that it's now massive. And actually getting people to understand that this is kind of how the community was working before. So everyone's supposed to be contributing and giving to the community and then receiving from it in likeness, that actually that is a model which just isn't scalable like that.
Yeah.
That you end up in small groups of friends for sure, but you can't do everything for free. It's just not possible, is it? It's one of those things that if you were as a person giving, I mean, I know, for example, I run a drama group. We managed to get funding for that. I run a co-op, which we all pay for equally so that it covers the cost of running it. And we all contribute a week or more to it, which obviously costs money in terms of resources that we bring along to do it. I run loads of groups and meetups. I organise stuff with big venues like big days out and stuff like that as well.
Yeah.
And obviously I don't charge for my time. I just pay my way like everybody else does. Like, if I get any discount, it is shared into the overall cost for everyone. So it's like, these are things where I'm not making any profit from doing them, but I'm doing them for the community. And so they are still me putting effort and time into producing something for other people to appreciate. If I was to do all of that completely out of pocket, I would not be able to sustain that. I would not have the income available to me to do that. And I think the truth is that actually most families, especially post-COVID, so you've got this massive uplift in home educators, but you've also got a massive loss in terms of people's investments, their financial situation's tougher, everything is significantly more expensive, like 2, 3, 4 times as much as it was 5 years ago. And that ultimately we are looking at families needing 2 incomes typically, that actually they will really struggle on one. And I think we just really have to acknowledge that actually as we're moving into the world as it is now, the individuals cannot sustainably produce things for free. It just makes it too hard. It makes it something which you just is really, really tricky, isn't it? And I think you've also then got the flip side of what free means, right?
Well, that's the thing too. It's sort of like, while I appreciate that there is this willingness of parents to create content to school their kids with, to educate their kids with, I don't necessarily want what everyone is making, whether it's an issue of aesthetic or content quality, or if it's just the fact that we're not interested in that right now. It would be very hard to necessarily, well, it would be hard to follow the child's interests and have an interest-led education when you're only able to use what Susan down the street makes for science content, right? Well, if she's focused on anatomy, but your kids want to learn about the ocean, then that's really a disconnect, right? And you're going to have to be able to adjust your school to allow for your children to follow what's available. And then that just feels a little bit more boxed in. It doesn't let you have the creativity to really move on to a subject that interests them. And that is just a small portion of why it's not really working for the UK community right now. I think a lot of what you said about the community growing and being able to access what's happening in the two towns over. For example, we participate in a home education horse riding group, and we drive 45 minutes for that. So that's something that I don't know that I would have known about that 10 years ago.
No.
I would have never called that far away to inquire about it. But because of social media, because of the community that we have online through whether it's Instagram or Facebook, Facebook is heavily used here in the UK for home education, activities, communication, etc. I was not used to that because I just never used it for those reasons. And so there is a really strong online presence here in terms of the home education community, but that also means that you find out about other stuff. So it allows you to really expand that community. You're not boxed into those 30 people in your town. You
Mm.
can really search for what you want on a larger scale. And I think that has a huge benefit.
Yeah, and I think that when you actually look at the amount of different companies and venues and places that are starting to put on events for us as home educators, like for example, Marwell Zoo near us are an
Yes.
excellent example. They put on
Yeah.
home ed days. They put on plenty of staff. They've got their education centre all set up with loads of cool stuff for the kids to look at and talks and activities and crafts. You get to go and access it for a lower cost, which is really helpful because obviously everything costs so much, and it's really, really helpful to get to go and do these amazing days out for the kids. So obviously they just charge what they would charge per pupil when it's a school trip. So
Yeah.
it stops anybody from having to organise a trip and actually go down there, especially just based on like one big group having been organised by somebody. Like now venues are starting to offer more home ed days that you can just book onto and go, which I think is really helpful. But all of this work in creating those opportunities comes from those of us who may well value paying a little bit of something towards something to get to do it.
Yeah.
But also we see the value in the understanding that not everybody has got the energy to organise a massive group trip to go and do
Yeah.
that with a group of people. And ultimately as well, as someone who does this quite a lot, just recently I felt particularly let down when I'd organised a trip that was free. And I posted about it into the group that I run. We had over 40 odd people want to come, confirmed it with the venue. They're like, oh, brilliant. Okay, we'll get an extra person in to cover the group. And literally a week out, it was just a stream of people saying they'd booked to go on holiday, they'd cancelled, sorry, they'd booked something else. No, we can't make it now. And then on the day, half again cancelled
Yeah.
due to sickness, which I'm going to assume everybody was legitimately sick. But ultimately, that was really embarrassing. I'll just be
Yeah.
perfectly frank. Like I turned up at the venue with 8 children. And it was just like, I just want to hang my head. Like, I'm so horrified right now that you have gone to this much trouble for us and you've put on this day and we've taken a day in your incredibly busy diaries. Like, we were out of catchment as well. So they'd honoured my request for a home ed trip, even though we were out of catchment area for them, that they wouldn't even take a school trip from as far away as we were. So I'd worked
Right.
really hard to get them to allow us to come and do it. And it was just such a shame to have such a small group. But ultimately, the feeling that that gave me as an individual for like on behalf of the home ed community, like it makes me wonder how they will feel next time a home ed community asks
Right.
to plan a trip. And ultimately, it's not even just that. It's so, yes, there was a financial outlay and cost for the venue who were doing it for free for us and had put on extra staff to run it. And we had taken a slot that other people could have used. But equally, we have a person here who has spent hours wrangling people,
Yeah.
liaising with the venue, planning it, turning up. We had a family medical emergency that week, and like thankfully it kind of semi-resolved by that point, but I had to leave my daughter with my husband, who wasn't well that day either, to still
Right.
be there to support the group because I knew that it was important for me to be there. And I think it's just a shame that unfortunately what can happen when things are free is that people kind of feel like there isn't a consequence to not therefore utilizing that service. And I think ultimately, yes, okay, is that actually just a flaw in human nature and in actually people's respect or manners or whatever you might want to put it as? Like, is that just people not actually understanding that or like
Yeah.
valuing it? And so, yes, fine, that's maybe not such a great thing. And that is a shame. But ultimately, I think it's just human nature to kind of, when, especially as people who tend to enjoy the fact that we enjoy lots of freedoms, our life is very flexible. We get to meet needs as and when they come up. And sickness aside, obviously completely fair. People are sick, you can't make
Yeah.
it.
Can't do
Totally
anything about that.
understand.
It's
But
happened to all of us. Yeah.
and also plans change and we do have things that come up and stuff gets in the way. Like, I completely respect it, but ultimately we have got a real risk in that, in just that kind of like that flexibility means that we just tend to chop and change and we just tend to want to do something different. And it's like, okay, but let's just try and acknowledge that somebody has created something for you.
I think it's true. When there's not skin in the game, right, you don't value it the same. And
Exactly.
that's true for everything.
Yeah. And I think that we just have to acknowledge that as humans, we will have these moments when we've got other needs to meet, and we're allowed to want to flex and we're allowed to want to live a lifestyle that looks like that. But I guess it's remembering that if we want to sustain, like, so that if we want to really appreciate the core of what the home ed community is a bunch of people who are all putting on experiences and opportunities to support each other's children. And if we want to maintain that, support it and help it to stay alive, whilst also obviously contributing other things and like potentially running classes or groups ourselves where we like are charging for that time, etc. as well. Like, say, for example, you're a great drama teacher or a music teacher or whatever, and you want to run a class and like you want to earn money that way so that you can actually home educate your kids. That I think we can totally respect both sides to this, and we can still allow them to both exist. But we have just got to be conscious of that, I suppose, and actually recognizing that if somebody is still providing great opportunities for your children and you are saying, yes, that sounds like a great thing to do, then just make sure you're fully committed, I guess, and actually respect that that person, whilst it might be free, is still contributing something to make that happen. So I guess it's one of those things, like, we can have the core home ed community and the values that it has, and that is a good thing, and it would be a shame for it to be lost, because there are people out there, lots of people who are very generous and want to put on amazing stuff for us, and venues even, as I say, who want to obviously offer these opportunities as well. And so let's use them, let's appreciate them. If we book a space, then use it. And if you really can't because something genuinely has truly come up, then try and help that person to backfill it. Like, spread the word
Yeah.
quickly, replace you with somebody else. Let's try and actually continue that little nugget of beauty that is in the home ed community, of that kind of local community support. Like, let's try not to lose it, and let's
Yeah.
actually respect it, because that is a really wonderful bit, and it would be a shame to lose it. But I think, yeah,
Yeah.
that's definitely my 2 cents on it all. Anyway, have a bit of a rant. Okay, can you tell?
Well, it's fresh, right? It's something that happened recently, and it did, even though it was still a fabulous day, and I actually thought it was way better than I thought it was going to be, which is
Hmm.
one of the things where I wish I could go back and say to everyone who ended up not showing up, like before they pulled out, and just say, no, listen, this is the one you want to go to. If you double booked yourself, like, this is the one to come to.
Yeah.
Because I don't know when we're ever going to do it again. And also, it was just so unique and interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But that said, I think that there's also, in supporting our community in that way, there was also this element for me being there, part of the home ed community, where I did feel this like slight embarrassment
Mm.
for us. Like, oh gosh, we can't actually get it together. I don't know. Like, you know, it just it does put a bad taste in the mouth. Like, when these women talk to their friends about the groups that come through, they would have nothing bad to say about all the kids. The kids were excellent and they
Yeah,
were
they really were.
involved. They had great responses. They really showed up well as representatives of homeschooled children. However, I think they're going to say, like, yeah, they told us there were all these kids coming, and then we actually paid for a second employee that day, and then we didn't need them. So, like, yeah, it just felt icky. It just felt like,
Yeah.
so I was like over the top with like our thank yous and all of that throughout the day. And just like,
Yeah.
they just really were great. But all of
Yeah.
that aside, I think it's awesome to show up for the community in those ways, like to take advantage of all the free events. And let's face it, we all want free events. Like, we
Mm.
spend so much money as home educators. So the more we can do at no cost, or just the transportation, is like really a win.
Mm.
But I'm also equally happy to support parents, whether they're local to me or just relationships I've forged through Instagram over the years and things like that. I'm happy to support moms that are creating content that I actually want to use.
Yeah.
So whether that is through like a Teachers Pay Teachers website, which I used to use when I was educating in the classroom, or if it's through just finding moms, whether they're local or, again, I mean, I use something from a home ed mom in Arizona, not Arizona. Well, I have used one from Arizona, but in Australia. So, I mean, that is something that social media and the internet has made our community so large, and we're
Mm.
benefiting so much from it. Like, the amount of information that parents will share online just around what's interesting their child, and like, and hey, we're doing this book study and look how great this book study is, and they'll flip through it and I'll be like, oh yeah, I want to use that, and they'll link where they got it from, and I'll go pay the $5 to get that
Mm.
for my kids, because that is a value to me. So I think there is a way to also just support moms who are trying to make a living by sharing the effort that has gone into them pulling something together. There's even a mom who has created a document that just links YouTube videos, blogs, like, it's a resource document.
Mm.
So her resource is a resource. And it's like, if I'm doing history throughout time and I don't want to spend the time to go through YouTube videos and like check to see if they're actually legitimate. Are they actually useful? Do they talk about things that I want my kids hearing about? Or do they get a little too into one topic area that maybe I don't want them hearing about?
Mm.
Right. So, for example, let's take the Civil War. So that's something that is coming up in kind of the overarching curriculum for the grade level that one of my daughters is entering, if I compare it to the US and what they learn at that stage. That is something that I personally have probably like an elementary knowledge on
Mm.
from when I learned about it. I never did further research on that as a student or an adult. And so I'm going to have to educate myself on that along with my child. And so that is something where if I can actually pay for this woman who spent a lot of time to put together her children's education on that topic, I can go and buy that for a realistic fee. And then all I have to do is click a link and I have like videos related to everything that's important about that time. That is an amazing resource to
It
me.
is.
And like, she
Yeah.
could give it away for free, and she probably started doing that. And then one of her friends were like, "Are you crazy? This took so much time. This is a lovely
Yeah.
resource. Go put it online and make yourself some money so you can keep creating content like this." Like,
Exactly.
this is how we support each other now, in my mind. Like, this is how we can help parents who need dual income to continue to
Mm.
live. And we all know how expensive things are. Like, this is an amazing way to support the growing community. Like, I just
Yeah.
think that's such a beauty and something we can all do if it works for us. Obviously, I mean, don't buy something you don't need, but
Yeah.
know that these resources are out there.
Yeah. And I think that I know that a lot of people find it quite frustrating that as home educators, for example, the local authorities don't offer us any funding. We don't get any tax breaks. There's no help. If we put our kids into school,
Yeah.
schools will be getting thousands every year to take care of them and to offer their education.
Yeah.
But obviously that money, if they're not going to school, who knows where it goes into something else. And I do find that quite jarring sometimes. I mean, I obviously have my
Yeah.
opinions on what would happen if we were given that funding. Like what kind of hoops we'd have to jump through in order to be able to get it. But ultimately, I know that there's a lot of states in America now that are starting to implement a tax break or sort of tax refunds
Yeah.
or like chunks of cash towards parents using them for educational use. So they have to like submit receipts and things like that to confirm they've used them for something educational, but then they get to claim that money back. And that
Yeah.
obviously allows and also encourages parents. And I think if the government at the moment are obviously so worried about home educators and the type of education children are getting, and making sure that all children aren't left behind, etc. But what I find quite fascinating is that the money that is given to schools for children's education gets nowhere near home educators. If you choose to home educate, you're on your own. But all the way up to qualifications, they don't pay for GCSEs. There's no support with them actually getting any kind of qualifications at the end of their education, but also how much more likely is it that a home educating family are going to take their kids to the zoo? They're going to buy some good curriculums and resources and workbooks. They're going to get them some good resources to play with and do science experiments with if they know that they've got a fund of a couple of £1,000s a year that they can submit the receipts to and get that money back. I know for certain that my children would be doing a heck of a lot more extracurricular activities if we had a few more £1,000s in the bank every year. Obviously every month would be lovely.
In the States, in the States, it's a lot. So it depends on where you live. I know there are different opportunities in different states, and many don't have anything. So I know this is not this is probably the minority right now. But I have a friend in Florida who gets, I think, 8,000 to 9,000 per year per kid, and she has 3 kids in the school system. So she is essentially getting an income's worth of funding to have her kids do amazing stuff. They have memberships here and there. They're doing online courses. All the curriculum she buys is covered. And now it is a full-time job for her to manage the Excel spreadsheet and submit all the reimbursements and all of that. I mean, it is not without its challenge, but who wouldn't do it for that amount of money? And could you just
very
imagine the
gratefully.
relief? Yeah, the relief of knowing that anything you want to do is covered, that you don't have to worry about, can my kid do that drama club? Can my kid do karate? Can my kid do this museum? Right? Like, absolutely, you can do it because it's covered. You want music lessons? No problem.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
all
The
of
opportunity, you
that,
think about all the skills that could be
yes,
fostered and created in these kids that ultimately
100%.
families who often at the moment as well, I mean, we've got to really be obvious about the fact that a lot of people choosing to home educate at the moment are doing so because of disillusionment with the education system.
Yeah.
And their child is being bullied or let down or is neurodivergent or whatever it might be, and they're not being supported appropriately. Accessibility of education is not being considered deeply enough. So I came across the term active inclusion this week talking to one of my clients actually, and essentially that the concept of it is that you actively ensure that an environment is completely inclusive, that you have considered as many different needs, human needs,
Mm,
like standard everybody human needs, as well as like parents and disabilities and age and whatever's, and you basically kind of get up to a really good standard of accessibility, and that the concept of active inclusion is to ensure that everybody is thriving in that environment. And right now our country is kind of built upon an ableist mentality of the short narrow field of people who have got all the skills and all of the abilities and no limitations are able to do these things well, and everybody else struggles, like whether that's in school,
yeah.
at home, in work, out and about. That actually, if you have got any limitations whatsoever, you are probably not going to be supported brilliantly in these different environments. And obviously accessibility has been coming along, and we know that obviously like there's ramps into places, there's people are being more conscious of things, we understand that. But when it comes to obviously especially like the boom in neurodivergence and people kind of recognizing the traits and starting to understand that so many of us are actually autistic or ADHD etc as well, you are starting to see that actually workplaces, we've all known this. I mean, most people, if you said to most people, like, do you enjoy your job? The answer is probably going to be, well, I don't mind what I'm doing, but I don't really like the people or the environment or like the way I'm treated. And ultimately, a lot of different office environments are not very user friendly. They're not very kind. They're not very thought out and considerate. And like the expectations on people is not brilliant. And so ultimately, we're looking at that in schools and we're looking at that elsewhere as well. And so there's just more and more people are starting to recognize that actually schools are not actively including anybody. And so a lot of people are choosing home education because actually, regardless of their child's needs, their needs are just not being met.
Yeah.
And they want to try and do something differently. And I think that honestly, I congratulate any parent who decides that actually whatever their lifestyle looked like before, something's got to give, something's got to change, and we need to support our child. And they're now out there trying to find information, they're trying to do right by their kids. And that might not mean that they're actually able to give up their full-time job, and that might not mean that they actually have two parents worth of incomes. It might mean that they're
Right.
actually in a really difficult situation right now and also still trying to make this work. And so actually all these people out there who are producing reading lists and amazing YouTube videos and like even just even the creators out there who just make YouTube videos for free, that I'm literally able to just go on any subject
Yes,
you want, any
absolutely.
subject you like. If you want to search for it, you'll find a video on it. And ultimately, using a few subscriptions, like I don't have any qualms about paying for something like Twinkle, or for like a subscription to other kind of things that have a bunch of different curriculum items for me to just grab and use whenever I want. Like, if I can just grab something and print it off when we're doing a topic, or I can do a quick bit of research, find a great blog, and someone's given me some great tips and ideas. Like, I tend to quite enjoy the process of developing my projects with the kids. And so I guess for me, I actually really enjoy that bit. So it's not something which tends to bother me, but then that's also a privilege that I have the time and the energy to do so. There have definitely been windows when I have not, and I have not wanted to do it all myself. And I have come across some brilliant people who create these, as you say, those lovely unit studies and projects and all the rest of it. And to
Yeah.
just be able to just grab it and use it, for parents, especially when they have got a lot of time pressure, is super important. And I think we have to just be really careful. And I guess the point, I'm bringing it back around to the point of this conversation around how it's evolving and the homemade community, and being quite accepting and gracious about individuals doing it their way. The homemade community, in my opinion, as I came into it, really felt like that actually the concept was, you do you. We want to support you in being yourself and living your life with your kids, and providing an education for them in a way that works for them. And I think that what we can have a risk of here is a divide and a fear that kind of the new age home educators, or people who are coming through and starting doing it now, don't get the traditional community vibe, which I actually disagree with. I believe that we really care a lot about it, and actually we really want to integrate with it, and we're really grateful for its existence and its like the ethos that it brings us in terms of
Yeah.
community and child-led education, and respecting our children, and making sure we're treating them as equals, and the way that adults speak to my kids as friends. Like, if you ask my kids who their friends are, they will list some of my parenting friends. Like, they're people who they really respect and love and enjoy talking to and want to show their things to. My daughter was in here just before we started this, trying to show Ashley her shorts. I didn't fully understand at the time why it was that she was lifting her dress above her head. I was like, why are you
What is
flashing my friend
happening?
on camera? What are you doing? She goes, showing her my shorts. But yeah, I think it's just really
They were
important to kind
lovely.
of like recognize that that we have this amazing community, that we are still contributing to it, participating in it, and building on it in our localities. But our online presence and our wider influence and our interest in evolving home ed, respecting mums and dads. I mean, women, the reason why we kind of maybe kind of emphasize more women here, I guess, is because it's always been considered okay for dads to be earning money. For women, our work has been
Right.
undervalued for generations. And I think that
Yeah.
truthfully, we've got incredible parents out there right now producing amazing resources, putting a lot of effort into their home ed, who have the time and the money and the resources to be able to produce these things in the first place. Other people who maybe are not in such a privileged position are able to then utilize them and enjoy them, and their kids are able to benefit from them too. And that is ultimately still sharing in our community. That is still creating, it's adding richness and wealth of knowledge and experience and ideas and perspectives that allow our children to have a really broad and interesting home educating experience. And I think that I can see positives and negatives to both sides. I can understand why there's reservations and fears of so much changing, and so many people coming into a community will obviously disrupt it. Like, there is no way that, like, you think flash floods destroy riverbanks. We
Yeah.
know this. Like, they are going to break down some of the barriers and upset the flow, but that doesn't mean that what comes next isn't actually potentially going to be really, really wonderful, and allow the community to grow in new and interesting ways. I've literally got a Nile reference in my head right now. We've just been doing Egypt, and it's like the concept of the Nile flooding obviously fertilizes the land.
Yes.
And then
Right. We
I've been a
recently
bit
did that as
image in
well.
my head. So
Yeah.
anyway, I think, like, that aside, I think being part of this community is a wonderful thing. And I think whatever you are contributing to it or not, and joining in with or not, like, whatever is suitable for you and your family, it's kind of just kind of reminding you that it's okay to participate as much as you feel like participating. And obviously, if you are enjoying things and getting involved with stuff, great. If you want to plan stuff, great. If you want to just turn up and enjoy stuff, great. Be a part of it in whatever way makes sense for you. And I guess it's just, I guess, the reminder to be conscious of appreciating the opportunities that are being put out there for you. So making sure you're, if you're using them, use them. If you're not going to use them, make sure somebody else gets to use them. And equally, like, let's just try and enjoy supporting each other and adding your richness in whatever form that comes in, because you are valuable. We want to hear what you've got to say. Like, you are as much a part of the fabric of home ed as anybody else, no matter how new you are or whatever you're doing in it. Like, you are a part of it. And I find personally that to be really exciting, that there's so many new interesting people entering into our world every single day. Great new opportunities for friendships and knowledge and opportunities. But that's just my small opinion.
No, it's so true. And just, I mean, a huge thank you to all the parents who are, whether you're creating something or scheduling something or planning something or just sharing your experience and being able to, especially those who have been in the I want to say the industry, in the community for a while, just your experience of what you've gone through and sharing that back can be so helpful. And I think we just always find parents are so willing to have a conversation, to share what's working, what's not working, what they've tried, recommendations on books and everything. And I just want to thank everyone for that, because that openness to respond to a DM on Instagram from someone you've never met, or to reply back to someone who happens to be in a WhatsApp group that you're in, but you don't actually know who they are because you've never been to the same meetup at the same time. Like, the ability to just be so open and share everything does help to strengthen that community. It does matter, and it's so appreciated. You just never know what that parent on the other end has been struggling with. And if they're asking you for something and you're giving them some feedback, that is just immensely helpful. So I think, continuing to stay open and supportive and share your experiences with others will go a really long way to maintaining that kind of previous community feel that we might be at risk of losing as it expands. So thanks for that.
Yeah. And I think also that camaraderie and love in relationships, that just, a lot of the people in our home ed community that have become my friends are truly my family. I have realized more and more as I've gotten older that actually your husband may be an important person in your life, but actually your friends are just as important, and just as equally important, in my opinion. They mean just as much, and actually they can really enrich your life. Yes, a big thank you to everyone. Actually, again, I agree that it's such a lovely thing to contribute and be part of something. So thank you to everyone who is. But hopefully this has been interesting. If you've got any opinions or thoughts on it, please do share. As always, you're very welcome to comment, like, whatever you want to do. Quick shout out that we are now also on YouTube podcasts. So we only found out this week that we could list it on there, so yay. But I got it done, so now you can find us on there as well. So if that is actually your preferred listening place, then feel free to track us down on there now. But yeah, so lots of exciting stuff coming down the pipeline as well. We keep saying that at the end of our episodes, and we're not going to tell you what it is, because why would we do that? That's no fun, is it? But we'll hopefully see you all soon. So you have been listening to the Big Home Ed Conversations. We post an episode every Sunday, or as often as we manage to do it. We might have the odd one where we mess it up because of life.
Yes.
There is 5 kids between us. We have got more than enough possible interruptions, but we do our best. We will be back again with another episode next week, and we will continue on our series for probably about another 5 or so episodes, and then we'll break for the summer as always. So keep tuning in, and please do drop your feedback in. Come and follow us over on Instagram and TikTok. We've got the Big Home Ed Podcast, and see you again next week. Bye, guys.
Take care.